The Promised Neverland is a brand new anime series which brings new meaning to the term farm to table. It's time to take a look at a brand new anime series for 2019. It's called The Promised Neverland, a show that I'm glad I went into completely blind, as the ending of this episode freaked me the fuck out. And I have a feeling that this is going to go down as one of the biggest cult hits of the year. Maybe one of the most popular anime series of the year. The first episode, guys, was just fucking fantastic. I implore any of you, if you have not watched this episode, go watch it. If you don't know anything about Promised Neverland, don't look up anything. Just go watch the episode and take it for what it is. It was a really nice, shocking, surprising ending. So let's just go ahead and jump in. I think it goes without saying, spoiler warnings for the very first episode of Promised Neverland. Let's go ahead and jump in. Like I said, I've known a little bit about the series, mostly just the actual name, and I've seen some of the imagery, and the only thing that I've actually seen from that was just a collective group of young children. I had no idea what the overall story was going to be about, but going into this episode right here, I can honestly say that that was the best decision for actually enjoying the show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a big bite out of Promised Neverland. What's the story of this series? Well, it actually involves this young girl who goes by the name of Emma, an orphan who lives with 37 of her other orphan friends at the Grace Fieldhouse. Emma and her friends have it completely made in this orphanage. Everything is super fucking happy. They're there with their friends, they have freedom to go outside and do whatever they want, they're well fed, they're super comfortable, and they even have a loving mother. What's really surprising about the show is that it almost seems like it takes place in the past, but it's actually much farther in the future. All of these children are actually tested on a daily basis, working on these weird computers for some unknown reason, and some of them even have a really strong rivalry with one another. It's also just a straight introduction to all of the main characters of the series. We actually have three characters who look like they're going to be the leads. First, we have Emma, who looks like she's the default main character, who is super bubbly, happy, inquisitive, and is basically the default main character of the series, who has dreams of eventually just growing old and being happy in this world. She doesn't even want to leave, unlike the other kids who desperately want to be adopted and see the outside world. For her, just being with her friends is enough. She's joined by the other two main characters of the series. There's Norman, who is like a super genius. He's like the smartest kid at this orphanage, and seems to have something of a small rivalry with Emma in some senses. We get to see a lot of that in this episode as they're playing a really intense game of tag with one another, and it also displays the fun personalities that all these characters are going to have. And lastly, of course, we have Ray. Now, Ray is basically the badass of the group. He's the dark, calculating one, and he also seems to be the best strategist and the most realist of all of the characters, accepting that they are trapped in some sort of world. They know nothing about the outside, and there's probably some sort of ulterior motive to all of this. But considering how happy everything is and how hunky-dory the world is, there's really nothing to worry about. They do a great job of highlighting that in the first half of the episode, just showing how just fucking bubbly everything is. You would definitely want to live in this beautiful, idealistic world with the hope that someone is eventually going to find you and love you and treat you as your child. However, it's the end of the episode where things take a very dark turn. One of the characters introduced in this episode is this adorable little girl who goes by the name of Connie. She's one of the youngest members of this orphanage that we've actually seen, and apparently she's been adopted by someone, and she's going to be leaving the orphanage. She hates to see her friends go, but it is something that eventually all of them are going to have to face. Someone is eventually going to find them and try to take care of them, and while her friends are incredibly happy, they also miss her, and they discover that she's left behind her little stuffed bunny, so they decide to try and find her, and they go outside and they go to this big massive gate, which is incredibly ominous and dark, and one that they're not allowed to go through. But this time the gate is actually open, and both Norman and Emma decide that they're going to investigate, and they're desperately trying to find Connie when suddenly Emma looks into the back of this carriage and finds her, except that she's dead, mutilated, and looks like she has had all of the blood completely sucked out of her body. It is an amazingly horrific and scary image to see this adorable little girl suddenly just dead and mutilated. It's at this point that Emma and Norman realize that something is not quite right here, and they're suddenly having to hide from these two people who are looking for them. That's when they learn that they're not in an orphanage. They're at a farm. They are being raised to be fed to some demonic alien-like creatures. This entire orphanage is quite literally just a free-range farm for human children, for human flesh. That's right. Kids are on the fucking menu. To make matters worse, their mother, Isabella, the one who's taking care of all of them, is actually sort of responsible for delivering all of these children. It makes a lot of sense why they're being raised and why they all seem to have these numbers which appear on their necks. That's actually how they organize their livestock, so to speak. And the actual creatures that eat them are really freaking weird looking. They're like really tall and lanky with this sort of like idiosyncratic body with these crazy cloaks and these really creepy masks which have these like two giant vertically aligned eyes. And they have these weird, creepy, long fingernails. Basically, the ending of the episode is just fucked up and absolutely horrifying when these kids learn that they're basically being raised as food. And instead of ending up on the menu, they're going to try and do their best to escape with all of their friends. But what lies on the outside world? Is it just like a giant smorgasbord for humans? Are they risking being eaten by everything? Or is there actually hope for escape? That's what Promised Neverland is going to be all about. So what's the rundown on the very first episode of Promised Neverland? What a great first episode. And what an amazing twist. Going into this series blind was the best decision possible, as I didn't know really what to expect what the show was going to be all about. The first half of the episode would indicate that it's going to be a happy kind of fun show about characters going through their lives, growing up. It's a coming-of-age story. But it ended up transforming into something else entirely by the end, and something that they sort of subtly hinted at the beginning of the episode and as the actual series went on. And getting to see the freedom that these kids have of being able to go outside and do their thing, they quite literally are like living livestock. They have numbers attached to them, they have daily tests, they get exercise, and they get fed until eventually they are processed and killed and turned into little kid burgers. When Emma has this sudden realization, it's a horrifying moment for her, as basically her entire world has been completely crushed. Everything that she's grown to love and live in this world has completely turned against her. Luckily for her, she does have some very smart comrades in the form of Norman and Ray, and I have a feeling that these three characters are going to be sort of like the cornerstone of the entire series, and getting to see them grow and how they're going to escape I think is going to be one of the best aspects of the show. It's also going to be horrifying every single time one of these children are chosen to be adopted. As you know, it's only a matter of time before they end up in some sort of fucking taco. Or maybe even a pizza. Kid pizza. Look, I'm not here to discuss demonic children recipes. What I will say is, the overall premise of the show is downright disturbing and incredibly creepy, and man, I cannot wait to see where it's actually going to be going. This is a type of series which I think is going to leave a big ripple in the anime world, and I think it's going to gain a lot of people's attentions. It is worth mentioning that the production value of the show is also very good, with some very great character designs, with every single child looking incredibly different and not like one another at all, and that immediately allows you to sort of identify with them and kind of get who they are. I will say, though, that the only thing I don't really like about some of the character designs is that sometimes I think the faces are too small for their heads. Like, their heads are way too big, but the faces are way too small. I don't know what it is. It's not like that all the time, and it might just be a stylistic choice of the show, but it's a really minor nitpick, and honestly doesn't affect my enjoyment of this very first episode, which is why I'm going to drop a 5 out of 5 on the very first episode of The Promised Neverland. I highly recommend this show if you haven't seen it. Please go check it out. If any of you did watch the first episode, tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below, and what you hope to see from the rest of The Promised Neverland. That does it for this review. I'll see you all next time, and as always, stay down now, baby.